Hi, I'm the Blue Iron Wings and welcome back to part 2 of modding the Stampede. In this part I'll be working on the Springer parts and removing excess wiring.
I'm going to remove this bit that you're better viewing in the plunger tube. This little cover helps keep the plunger tube in its tracks while it's moving and keep the lever down in place. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws. With them off, you can simply lift it up and off the way. And you can see by the end of the plunger tube cap screws in, it runs in that track. Right, plunger tube. You can clearly see the teeth here, and you can see much better how the arm interacts with the little roller there. We need to remove the return spring collar here. This one, I'm not really going to remove it. I'll remove the screw on one side, and put it here. Loosen off the other screw. I'm just going to pick up the collar, you're going to stay put mate, off to one side, and I'll lift up the dart finger. That loosens this a bit. But we're still caught on the back of the trigger, so I'll just press that in to release the trigger. Yep. Just have to release the spring a bit more. See these little notches here? Your return spring fits into them, and I'm just going to refit this screw here because then I know that's the right screw for that hole. I'm not going to lose it. I'm just going to slightly better look of the arm here, spring loaded, which is activated on by the back of the plunger tube, and that's your release mechanism, which activates upon the trigger. And you can probably just about see there the dart gate mechanism lever activated on by the front of the plunger tube, and a slightly different view of the rear catch. This is a plunger tube. There are many like it, but this one is a Stampede one. What's different? Well, I've already pointed out the little nubs on the front and the back for activating the mechanism, but you can also see the rack here, which is used for pulling this thing forward and back. Rotating to the top. See these little wheels here? They sit in a groove. This in a groove in the top of the shell. So when you're pushing against this, instead of just doing plastic against plastic, it's plastic rollers. It's on a rollers as opposed to a straight drag. So your return spring is obviously what pushes the whole thing back. This is your back of your plunger tube. You can see the catch rod there. So if you listen, you can actually hear the air restrictor as the end cap. I'd just actually like to point out this little thing here is actually padded. You've got padding outside your plunger tube, and this thing slides backwards. You've got this entire spring here pushing it backwards that way, and this thing will bash up against here. Let's take this thing apart so I can do the spring swap. Couple of little crossheads. Plunger tube. Plunger head. Things I need to do. I need to actually remove the air restrictor from this before I do any more refitting. I'll also be cleaning this up, removing any of the lube on it and applying some new fancy lube. But for reference, that's your stock spring. Don't think I've seen anybody give any numbers for it, but the Blastersmiths UK claims that their new spring is 6 kilograms, and also claims it is 3 times the power, which implies your stock spring is 2 kilograms. They're stock plunger rods. A couple of key points. Catch faces upwards when you reinsert it. There's a tiny little air relief pressure hole there. What I'm going to do is I'll just shove some super glue on both sides and it will just bung it up. The O-ring looks to be pretty clean and good condition, but I'll give the O-ring a clean before I actually put it back on and degrease it. You'll notice that it moves in place. I believe that's what they call a floating O-ring design. The idea being it acts as a one-way valve to help air move in and out when you're moving it around, because obviously when you're priming it, you're pulling it backwards and increasing the plunger volume, and you need air to get in because you don't want to vacuum load stuff, which I suppose this little hole at the back can help with, but you don't really need it if you've got this floating O-ring design. How does that work? Well, people like to double pack it and fill it in or cover it in plumber's tape to try and stop it moving, but that's not at all what you want. When it's going forwards, i.e. a power stroke, this will be caught and it pushes it backwards all the way. And you'll notice that this side has no cutouts, so it seals perfectly fine. You're not going to get any air loss, you don't need to pack it with plumber's tape. But when you're priming it and pulling it backwards, it comes forward like this. And you'll notice these little gaps here go pretty much all the way into the base. And if you look into these gaps, you see the little gap there, which means the air can get around the plunger seal. Obviously on a power stroke that'd be bad, but on a power stroke, as I said, it's going forwards, sealed. On the priming one it's pulled forwards so the air can get in, so it doesn't vacuum load. Basically a one-way valve. built into your plunger rod head, which is pretty clever, so you don't need to pack that. Also, as a note, I'm no expert on this, so I'll blame Foam Data Services. I think he's mentioned with non-straight plunger tubes, they're often a bit wider at the top and a tighter fit at the bottom. The idea being hear the noise it's making, but it's a looser fit, but that means you get that initial burst of energy quicker, and as you get further down the tube, it still gets tighter and it gets more efficient. The idea is you can get it moving quickly. So it's that first burst of air that will overcome the friction on the dart and boot it out. So if that initial push is a bit slow, you've got low velocity air. If it's quicker, yeah, you might lose a tiny bit, but you get that faster acceleration outwards. I'm going to take this outside, pop out the air restrictor on it, which is going to be fun. I think I used a selection of different size drill bits and just counter-mangled it out. Right, we are out in the garage. I'm going to have a go at the bit I always find to be the scariest, which is removing the air restrictor from a Springer. Because obviously if you get this wrong, this entire piece is scrap. Go find a new blaster. Now we've still got the return spring on it, so we are going to remove that. We're going to wind off the return spring. Plunger tube for each bit in the middle. These bits clip together and the air restrictor sort of lives in the centre there. Dart peg in the middle there. You can see where it's been pushed together here. Now these things are normally solvent welded. Oh, there's an anti-rotation bit there. Yep, I'd say it's still solvent welded as I expected it to be. Not really in the mood for smashing it up, so we're going to go the old school fashion. Fair long wires, put it as much as we can, and then we miss the tooth. Hold it. Yeah, you've got limited room. You don't want to force it, because if you force it down here, you'll elongate the barrel. But anyway, we're going to put it in, hold it, and twist. The idea being is that you twist out the dart peg out of the way. Well, I've twisted it a bit, but it's not snapping yet. Maybe I'll do this one a bit differently. We've got the metal vise here, and if you look at the end of this, you can see these screw ports, they extend outwards. So what I like to do is put them in the vise and sort of just leaning on them to stop it wiggling around. We're not going to crush it, but this one's on a flat surface, so I'm actually pushing it onto the end of the plunger tube rather than just the screw ports. Now the centre one here has just 2 bars going across it, so I'm going to line up my narrow screwdriver, hold it in place, and hope for the best as I tap it with a hammer. I may have snapped it, or it may have slipped off and got wedged. Well, let's turn something. The dart peg is now off centre, and we're going to hit it with a hammer again. And that's how you improve performance. You hit it with a hammer till it's better. Oh, perfect. You can see where it's been twisted. We're trying to twist it out, but in the end, the better option was just to actually leave it there, so it could come out. So I could actually use it to put it out in one piece. Right, the air restrictor is loose. Goes up and down, it rotates round and round. Not seemingly interested in coming out, but at least I know that part's nice and clean. I'm going to wager that the air restrictor thing is actually wider than the barrel. So where does that leave us? The back of it has 3 doodads. So we're in the vise. I'm not pushing on the plunger tube this time, just a little underneath it, because that's all as it goes. Now we've got slightly wider, we're going to call them bridging bits here. Now, what's happened there? Pushed on the side a bit, slightly deformed it, but not pushed through. If you think you've got it, all it's done is slip down the gap. So we will continue a course of maintenance, even after removing the front bridgy bits and the back bridgy bits. Right, I've actually removed the centre section, but it's caught now, so I'm going to have a go at trimming off a bit of the bridging that's still attached. That's the back of the air restrictor. That's the bit in the plunger tube it sits on, like there. Air restrictor spring. These things aren't massively strong, basically just to tension the doodad. Right, something just went crap bang. Back of the air restrictor. Now we're going to do the final bit of stripping on this. To basically pull out the wiring we don't need. What I'm going to do is remove bits and pieces and probably put them straight back in afterwards. Because once I've removed excess wiring, I don't need to keep most of these bits out. We've got 2 nice leads on the other side of the shelf for the switch. And we need the right 2 wires from this. And the 2 wires I need, actually this red one and that red one. And I'm just going to double check with a multimeter. Depress the switch to turn it on as it were, which I have no answer for this. Now click between the bottom 2, which goes off when I release that. Right, so you definitely want the bottom two. I'm probably going to route it down round here-ish somewhere. So I've chosen smaller components than BSUK, so I'm hoping I can hide it down here. Here's the plan. You may want to use this switch later. So I'm going to cut it there. That gives me far too much, but by that means it gives me options. I don't want it where it connects to the top one there, but I don't want either of those top two connectors. I just want the middle two. So if I want to free it, I need to strip it off. I want to keep the red. Right, I'm going to try and cut this one fairly short. I'll do something similar on there. I'm sure if I was pro I would have been desoldering and pulling these off, but I want to just get the bits I want out. But I'm leaving a little bit on here. At some point I'm going to come with the soldering iron, I'll heat this up and I'll just yank that bit off. Right, I've now freed this up because I want to keep the maximum length of wire. Right, so that gives me the control wires, the cycle control trigger switch, 2 wires to the on-off switch. Yeah, we don't need battery contacts. There's a little plate here, little gap filler. I'm going to remove that. That also functions a lovely place. There we go, how we come. There's a lovely hole there. Allow them to drill or cut anything, just to feed the big chunky wires through. And we'll reuse the existing battery bay. Right, battery connectors out. All the wiring we don't want out, all the locks we don't want out. Okay, here's the last bit. We don't need the whole battery tray. Some people just cut it through, but actually that's a bit daft and ugly. You can just pop it out. The only difference is you need this triangle driver bit. So that comes apart. What's your battery thing? Some form of, what you call them, captive bolts. That's secured back together. That'll just fit right in the back of the blaster. That is basically it for disassembly. In the next video I will go over the stuff I'm going to use to produce my version of the Blastersmiths UK kit and my plans for where bits are going to go, and etc, etc. So yeah, end part 1. Thank you for watching. See you soon for the next bit.